return people to countries where they are likely to be harmed. So that principle that works in the refugee situation also comes into play when we are talking about trafficked persons. And the intention is to make sure that the state where the trafficked persons find themselves invest some time into quickly establishing whether the country where they're trying to return this person, whether they are safe. We talk about their gender, we think about their age, we think about how they are trafficked, we think about the conditions, about their cooperation in the prosecution process. All these things put together determine whether this person should be returned to this country or not. And the point is, it should be safe and preferably voluntary. Safe return and preferably voluntary return. In that word, preferably voluntarily, we understand that you don't compel someone to return unless all these things are put in place. Now, the country of origin has a duty to receive its citizens when they are being returned. It also has to invest time in finding out, does our citizen have a travel document? Will they be safe when they return? And also now the idea of remedies. Now, remedies in law are the enforcement of a court decision or of an agreement. In law, they usually say there is no injury for which there is no remedy. So these people who have been trafficked are suffering injury from the traffickers. Sometimes they suffered injury from the states that ought to protect them. So the remedies that we have posted on the platform include restitution, there is compensation, but there is also satisfaction and guarantee that there will not be re-trafficking. So that is the general scope of this question of returning people to their countries of origin. Now, in the practice problem, I asked people to think about the country in which they are as a destination country, planning to take someone back home, and you reflect on whether you have any case in mind at which your country as a destination country has been able to successfully return people. And if you're the country of origin, whether your country has capacity to receive returnees and whether it has the framework in which the trafficked persons can receive compensation or restitution in whichever way. So that's what I had to share for today. I'd be glad to hear from you on this question of the right of return, the duty to return, and the remedies as you see them in the countries where you are serving.
Click it so that it will take you to Zoom.
Shirona? Hello?
Yeah.
Olivia?
Yes, I'm here just trying to get Philomena to join.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but I was listening to you. Very, very interesting. Some things I didn't realize, actually.
Okay, who do we have? Gabriela, you gone?
Yes, good morning, Richard.
How are you? We don't have too much time, so we have to be brief today.
Yes, Richard, you know, here in Argentina, we have a famous case of Alika Kinan, who was trafficked to Spain. And after the government make all the papers, and they guarantee to her to be safe here in her own country because she's from here, Argentina, from Cordoba. And her situation was very famous because She was the first woman in Argentina in 2012 to return to the country, and also she was guaranteed to be safe. In that case, also the framework that the country organized was really, really very good. But other cases from here, from Argentina, we don't know. Maybe some other organization, they have this situation with the Colombian girls or Venezuelan girls.
Okay. So that's a nice case to hear from.
Yes, but from other experiences, I think it's very, at the moment, also in Argentina, it's very hard to bring back to the victims, because as I mentioned in the last meeting, corruption in Argentina is very high, and sometimes the victims are linked to the politician issues. And also, as the church, we are not working as we have to work. No, it's very, very, very difficult at the moment. From 2 years ago, maybe with this new government, the rules will change, and also they will provide more organizations to work in the area of human trafficking.
Okay. The rain is on our end. I need to mute my microphone.
Hello? Richard?
Yes, please.
Can I say something?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I'm looking at the other end like when I was reading the article, I was really challenged by the issue that how the returnees, when they come back, let's say where they are subject.
Get out, go back to where you got the message that told you to join. Then
Hello?
start again.
Okay, I was looking at it in a different way, not rather very different way. I was looking at it this way. When the returnees, I'm looking the ones that come now, like to my country, Kenya. When the returnees return to the country, they are subjected to a lot of stigmatization. They're stigmatized by the community, by their families, and also they are rejected and discriminated. So I also was thinking when I was reading that article, I was linking the statement that Sister Raula keep on talking about, that we don't have this place to heal them, shelters to keep them for some times. Even if it is, maybe they are coming from Dubai, they are coming home to their country of origin. I think there should be a mechanism that when we receive them, how are we going to help them, that if they are going to go back home after the rehabilitation, if we are going to reintegrate them back at home, which mechanisms are we using, first of all, to reach out to the family before they reach there, and also to the community? Because I think when I was hearing from Nigeria last time, most of the community are also not really involved in trafficking. They know the person is going out of the country. So the receiving end, or this other part, I think is very, very important. And I'm talking from a lot of experience. We were at one time stuck with one lady that came back even with a baby, and she could not go home for almost like 2 years because we are trying to negotiate with the family. Your daughter came back, we know you're expecting a ransom of money, she never brought it, but she has come with a baby, it's a gift. It was very difficult. So I was looking at that statement like that. But thank you very much, Richard. I also got other inspiration from your reflection, brother.
May I say something? Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Hi, I'm Sister Tiziana. I'm in the Emirates. And I would like to share also my experience because we have a good number of girls who are returning back home, to their, the countries of origin. which are like Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, especially from Africa. And they are feeling what, according to my experience, they're feeling, first of all, is to being ashamed. So their connection with their own family is really, really poor and weak. What we are trying to do, but this is not an official net and a connection, is something that we are doing privately, is to be in touch with the religious congregation that have shelters or some organizations and structure that can welcome them, first of all, and then to try to help them to get involved again to their life, previous life there in their own countries. And it's true that mostly, these girls have got babies. Sometimes when the situation is very difficult and they are here for, unfortunately, for prostitutions, they have also babies. So it's really much more difficult for them to go back home and to present themselves with a baby without father, without any kind of good, let's say, background and good history to be presented to the families. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Now not anymore, Tiziana, you are mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now yes.
Yes, yes. I don't know whether you got my sharing.
Yes, we heard you. We heard you loud and clear. Thank you very much. Clara wanted to say something.
I was thinking about this topic. I have more experience when I was in South Africa, more than here in Mexico. Is still very short my experience in this thing. In South Africa, I was volunteering in a shelter for victims of human trafficking and domestic abuse. And this shelter is run by the Mercy Sisters there in Pretoria. And really, as Tiziana say, and other, I think Sister Jane also said, there were many people. They were coming from Thailand, China, and many places from Africa, and with fake promises, and all of them end up in other situations, mostly prostitution. And some of them ran away from their captors, the traffickers. Others were rescued by the police, and they were there in the shelter. But the sad situation is that some of them even ran away from the shelter because they have this kind of the Stockholm syndrome with the captors, né? And they were there in the shelter if they agreed to collaborate with the investigations with the government. If they don't agree to collaborate, they will be sent back home. Most of them, they were ashamed to go back home because they were with babies, they were poorest than the time when they arrived, they were sick, or they were in a worse situation than the time when they arrived. But I remember a case where a girl from South Africa that they promised a house if she agreed to marry the Palestinian, Pakistani man, and she was sent there to Pakistan. But everything was only in order to allow the family, this man, to enter to South Africa because he will be married to a South African girl. And practically the situation of this girl was a slave there in Pakistan. Thanks God that when they were trying to come back to South Africa as a couple, a married couple, the authorities at the airport, the thing that we were talking about the day before yesterday, the importance of these agents to be prepared to see the situation, not to recognize. They noticed something strange, and they separate the couple and interview them. And the girl, where she was able to share everything, and she was sent back, yes, to South Africa, but put in a shelter with attention and everything. She was already pregnant. I think when the different countries are really collaborating, are really in this willing to do, they can do a lot. But most of the other people, they were afraid to go back home because they, to their community, some of them, they were from small communities where they knew the traffickers, where they knew who was those who were treating even the family. The cases that I know here in Mexico is also two young girls from rural area, that member of the family who is living in Mexico City, a big city, went there to invite them to come to work in the city. In this case, it's not crossing borders, but the same situation. Now that the judgment is finished, it is difficult for them to go back to their communities, to their families, because they didn't get the principal trafficker. They got and put in jail one of the person who was there in the middle, but it's not the real and the principal traffickers, or it's not safe environment to go to be out. I think there is a lot of agents that it means to be prepared to be, I don't know, to have the resources to work together for a better returning of the victims to the survivors to the normality of to a better life. It's something like that.
Okay. Now you have a Pakistani child in South Africa who is taking care of his ancestry.
The girl the girl was South African, and the people who wanted to marry her, and she was 16 years old, and the people who wanted to marry her offer to the family, offer a house, because they were really poor people, if they married, and the family accepted, and she also accepted. Once she came back, she was pregnant. The shelter where we were was for adult people. So she, the sisters from Good Shepherd sisters, received her and help her to continue with the pregnancy and to take care of the situation. They are dealing with these women that are pregnant, and sometimes they don't want to keep the babies. So the sisters are working with these situations.
Yeah, crisis pregnancy is a very serious service in this trafficking situation. I hope that those of us involved in ministry are not quick to offer the abortion option.
Sometimes, no, not at all.
Sometimes some of us
okay,
who are practicing Catholics have a tendency of looking the other way, and you say, let people follow their conscience. Yet it would seem that many of these international agencies dealing with this humanitarian situation, they quickly offer abortion as an option. So by being faith-based practitioners, our services in the trafficking situation should be ready to offer solutions to help this young girl keep the pregnancy and not to be in a hurry to look the other way so they can follow their conscience, because the people offering abortion services are abundant. So I'm glad that the girl that returned to South Africa came with the Pakistani pregnancy, and probably we have a Pakistani South African in the process. We are building a global community, you know.
Yes, and there's the Good Shepherd sisters. They are working with the family. Of course, she couldn't go back to her family. They were offering her education, formation, and also helping her to decide if she wanted to keep the baby or not. In case she didn't want to keep the baby, she can have the baby, and maybe they are working with adoptions or something this, but it's in a safe way. So she's in even physically, the girl was differently when I met her again some months later when she left the shelter where I was.
It would be interesting to find out that if this child was kept and that she chose to keep the baby, the process of raising the child must involve the father of the child. It would be interesting how the system would link back to the Pakistani father in terms of maintenance for this child and sending aid to sustain this child. That would be an interesting link to follow up on it with regard to return. Okay, thank you very much, Clara.
Thank you, Richard.
Yes, D4D, someone is signed in as D4D. I don't know who it is. They had put up their hand earlier. Okay. Kinsley, would you like to say something?
Hello? Yeah, I would like to, but I'd like to listen more again from what you are saying.
All right. Running out of time, we have removed the 40-minute time limit on your group meeting. Okay. So let's keep going.
But at least I can still add something, because the question of people returning back, I've not experienced that much, but I know in Burkina Faso they have a system of welcoming people. They work with Oxfam Quebec. I don't know whether you know the ONG.
Oxfam Quebec.
Yeah, they also work with Red Cross. These people, they provide what they call relief packages for some of them, where they give them some kits like foodstuffs, and then kind of bed or a house where they could stay like 1 or 2 months. If the person doesn't have any family member, it's just a time for him to get acquainted with the environment. So for people coming back from other countries, I've seen it, but we're not much in touch what they're doing. But the government, at least they have some packages just to help them for a while, and then see how they could get acquainted with their family. And those of them that don't have families, how they stay at a place 1 or 2 months, depending on when they will get a job or whatever, get used to the society.
Okay, so Oxfam Quebec has facilitated that.
Yeah, Oxfam Quebec. Yeah.
All right. So we now know who D4D is. This is Sister Kayula. I think this must be Zambia. Okay. Sister Birgitta, would you like to say something?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Ah, that's good. Then finally I managed. Good afternoon, all of you.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Yes, I would like to contribute a bit. I have not yet so much experience, but when I was still in Kenya, we had a case. There was a girl, 14 years, sitting every day. It was begging trafficking. And I started to be friends with her. Sometimes I bought her maize and soda and so on. So finally, I involved also the NGO Kenya Heart, or Heart Kenya, and we finally managed that she was ready to come with us and to go to the shelter. but she was very much afraid, was always speaking about her sister who will beat her if she comes back. So she went to the shelter, and 2 days later, I got the news from the NGO that she has escaped out of fear for her sister. If there had been already a networking between Kenya and Tanzania, because she told us that she is from Mwanza. And at that time, I don't even know that here in Tanzania was something in Mwanza or in another place working against human trafficking. Now, since 2018, I am here in Tanzania and trying now to get ready the Tanzanian sisterhood to enter in Talitha Kum network to make it more easier. And then from there, from the TICAS, it's called TICAS, Tanzanian Catholic Association of Sisters, we can maybe reach out. If we had already known at that time that we can address to a sister who is living in Mwanza to go to look for that family, because that girl gave us the phone number of the family. So it would have been possible to find out and to integrate the child back. Mm-hmm. And this child, I'm sure she was brainwashed, because sometimes she was turning her eyes around, and even the people from the NGO, they thought, yes, she might be brainwashed, that she's so afraid. And I'm sure it is not the only case.
Mm. Okay, so the idea of having cross-regional networks of people who know what is going on and being able to do the linkages.
Yes, I think that is very important, and that is why we are maybe here to find out where we can link. Because if we have here in Tanzania, find out a girl from Nigeria, now we can maybe link to those who are in Nigeria or in Uganda or wherever, or in Burkina Faso. So it is maybe easier when we establish this network, this African network. It will be much easier to connect to one another and to get help from one another.
Okay. So thank you, Sister Birgitta. Let's go to Sister Kayula.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask 3 questions. You know, regarding the principle of course, I know it is a French word. I don't know if I pronounce it. Non-referment. Anyway, Father knows better.
I see Kinsley smiling. You've said it right.
Yes, I know, because I realize French. But do you know, I was just, the things that you sent today, I read them and I was saying to myself, they raise a lot of questions for me. I was looking at this principle and I was saying, often what I've seen, like using the Zambian case, is that victims, I don't have, as a person, or many people do not have access to them, because for their protection, they are kept in a safe place, and only people who work there are allowed to go there. So then I was saying, if I'm playing the role of advocacy, if say someone has been retained when they should not be retained to a place which may not be safe, how do I advocate since I wouldn't know? That's what was going in my mind. And then another thing is resettlement. I read part of it saying a child can actually be resettled in a third country. And I was saying, how about an adult? If it's unsafe for an adult to return to their home country, and if it's also unsafe for them to remain in the country of destination, are there provisions for resettlement for this adult? I saw some provision for a child. And the other one, I hope I'm not going too fast, but the other one is, to what extent is return voluntary? I have worked with just refugee service, and I noticed that although within the refugee law, that is a very good provision, but when it came to repatriation of Angolan refugees, I was privileged to be, working with JRS at the time that, this was there. I noticed that from the writing, from the form itself, UNHCR would write, when would you like to return? With the implication that you're actually supposed to return. So even if there are these durable solutions like reintegration and the like, there was no question to say, would you like to stay? And if you wanted to stay, when everything was, everything there said,
your country is now safe to return to. It was very difficult for some refugees to remain. So how does that happen in relationship to victims of trafficking?
Mm-hmm. Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to indicate that the principle of non-refoulement is imported into the trafficking situation when it gets to returning people home. Why?
Yeah.
It's important to emphasize that returning home ought to be voluntary, safe, and preferably voluntary. But because the law on human trafficking is younger than refugee law, it then counts on the principle of non-refoulement. Don't return someone to a situation, to a country where they won't be safe. So it is a principle that the trafficking principles rely on to emphasize that the return to home should be preferably voluntary. We then move into the situation of the third country. Again, third country is a refugee principle, meaning someone can settle where they've run, they can be returned home, they can be settled where they have run to, or they can be resettled in another country. So it is another principle that the trafficking principle try to apply, but they emphasize it with children more than adults.
Why not? Why?
The principle is this: countries are very touchy about receiving immigrants. You know this principle. They try to avoid who comes in, who do we settle, who do we look after. So they would emphasize the third country for children and lesser for adults. However, there are a number of grounds upon which an adult would be able to claim settlement in the country or in a third country. We start by the question of where the person was trafficked. For example, if you succeed in locking out return because it is unsafe, then the next decision you have to be working with is whether we settle this person in the country of destination or we find a third country. Now, this is where regional entities become important. If you know that keeping this person in this country, they will fall back into the hands of the traffickers, then it becomes necessary that we move this person to a third country. So it is clear we can't return them home, and then this place is also difficult for them, then we plan to move them to a next level. Now, about access of the advocates in these places of shelter, for sure, sometimes it can be complicated. But the beauty about it is that increasingly we have national steering committees and working teams which incorporate non-law enforcement officers. So I still think it is possible to access these people and be part of their process of return, because it is a legal process and it's supposed to be in open court in determining whether so and so should return or they shouldn't be returned. So the advocate, whoever has been enlisted to be the advocate of this person, can be able to do it. If you can't reach yourself, an advocate you would engage would be able to access this person. To what extent is return voluntary? This has been the question forever, because UNHCHR is the one in charge of this business. And sometimes it is the governments where people are coming from that say, repatriate our people. We need, like Rwanda has been insisting that there are no Rwandans in refugee situation, they should come home. And once the country says that, it means that the countries where people have run to, or the third countries, will find it difficult to grant refugee status or to even receive people, because the country back home is saying things are okay here, there shouldn't be any Rwandans who are refugees. So in that process, UNHCHR becomes constrained all that it would have to offer people is when do you want to go back? So I don't know what the Angola situation was. It would seem that Angola had indicated that things are okay back home, refugees should return. And that makes the process of a third country difficult, because they will keep, one of the questions they ask you when you're planning to settle in a country, you must show that actually you cannot go back home because it is unsafe at home. But home is saying everything is okay. So it complicates matters. And because many of the international system operates on the sovereignty of states, the states where people are supposed to be returned have a key stake. If they say they are safe, Rwanda is safe for refugees, people should return home, it becomes difficult for other countries to enforce it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting. Interesting.
All right. So
Thanks,
now,
Amelia.
Abby.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for all your sharing, but I'd like to share, or I would like to go back about the issue of pregnancy. My experience here in Japan, most of the technical intern trainees coming, as you know, Japan is a destination country. So most of our cases are the migrants or the foreign technical trainees, we say. But my experience recently, that actually we just found out that because some women will consult with our organization, which is the Talitha Kum, Japan, some women are forced to have an abortion if they get pregnant while they're working, or forced deportation or returning home. This is the cases recently that some women didn't know that that's against human rights. So through our group that we advocating to the government or the policy or the system of this recruitment, we were able to track this down. So now there's a law that they cannot force a woman of abortion or returning home. This is just recently, this is not just 2019, last year. So the case is, apparently the women will sign a contract to a recruitment company that if they get pregnant or have some serious disease, they sign a contract that they will abort it or return home. So some women, they're forced to get an abortion or forced to return home. Some of the family members back home, especially in Vietnam, they've been threatened. So to report to the government official or in Japan or the employer. So this situation is serious. It's we are trying our best to disseminate information to the technical interns coming from Vietnam, coming from the Philippines, Indonesia, and somewhere else. But this is our situation here. We still need to work hard. This is only a tip of the iceberg, because this technical intern program is really a issue of the human trafficking here in Japan. So I'd just like to throw that information to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby, for raising that. Your discussion raises matters that border on the International Labour Organization conventions, which usually inform the process of recruitment for employment, and they define recruitment agencies as employers. For purposes of non-discrimination, a recruitment agency is considered as an employer, and an employer cannot discriminate on grounds of pregnancy. These contracts where people are required to sign up and then either consider aborting or deported if they become pregnant are discriminatory, and they have to be challenged on the ground of being illegal contracts because of those provisions of discrimination. If the ILO is alerted about that, they can actually intervene and discuss it at the diplomatic level, including the ministry. So I'm glad at least that it's been clarified that people cannot be forced to abort just because they became pregnant while at work. That provision of the contract is an illegal provision, and I hope that people have the courage to fight it to its logical conclusion. Okay, thank you, Abby.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. That's we are trying our best to spread this information. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Jancy, you want to say something? Jancy? Okay.
Hello, Richard. I'm Jancy.
Yes.
But I'm traveling. My network is not proper. I am on and off really.
It's okay.
Plus, I'm not really following you much. I have not read the material you sent me. I'm sorry.
It's okay. All right.
I want to ask you something, it's possible?
Yes, Titiana.
Yeah. Yes, the principle of non-refoulement is under the international human rights and the law. So
Yes.
it means that it was signed up by every country, or is anyone is, I mean, because I was wondering that, you know, UAE here, you know, deportation is very, very common, is let's say that is official. Many of these women are deported. They are not following this.
Yeah, okay. The principle of non-refoulement is basically you can't return someone to a country where it is unsafe. Now, deportation does not necessarily mean that the country where they are returning this person is unsafe. Deportation is we are returning someone home who we think is an illegal immigrant, who we think they are not documented where they are, so we are returning them to their country. But non-refoulement is a principle associated with the convention, the Vienna Convention on Refugees, and many governments actually have signed up to that one, and it is about how to handle refugees in refugee situation. But that principle comes into play when we are dealing with
not safe countries.
Yes, in principle.
And yes, and what is the criteria to define a country not safe?
First, it is the self-identification of the individual. The individual could give you that information, and then you verify it. Unfortunately, as we discussed with the Kayula's case, is that the governments where the persons are to be returned have a lot of say in whether they are safe or not. Okay, like as we indicated the Rwandan case, Rwanda has its own issues, but Rwanda has said Rwanda is safe and we do not expect Rwandans to be refugees anywhere. Now, such a political and diplomatic statement makes it difficult for the agencies dealing with refugees or countries to grant asylum to some people unless an extra effort is made to verify. So it is taken on a case-by-case basis. We might not have a very standard claim.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Christiana. Sister Christiana. You are the only one with the sun in the background, so tell us what you have to tell us. We need to unmute you. Sister, we didn't hear anything. We need to unmute your microphone. Good. You will have to go over everything you said.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, we didn't hear anything.
I said I wasn't connected. I was here, but I could not hear anything. And I just started hearing, not even of the 5 minutes ago. So I wasn't following the discussion.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Well, people have been sharing from various perspectives on the issues of return, the readiness of countries to receive, the requirements for safety. You know, we keep using the principle safe and preferably voluntary return, but people have raised questions on what it means to be safe and what voluntariness consists in. Okay, Gigi.
Hi everyone. Good evening.
How are you?
I earlier, sorry, I did not catch who. Hi. Can you hear me now? I'll
Yes,
stop
we do.
the video.
Mm.
Early on, yes. Early on, I heard someone sharing about challenges where, well, in the whole process, Father Richard, from even the implementation, yes, it is an international law, but the implementation again from various countries differ. In the Philippines, with countries where we have bilateral agreements, then all the requirements of particular laws to repatriation are even improved through the years. But there are countries that are very difficult, or they're not cooperative, and therefore it's difficult to help out Filipinos returning, overseas Filipino workers returning. One particular experience, at least when I look at a particular network, and Talitha Kum is one such big network, was someone was sharing from Africa that it would have been good if they were aware who's involved with what process, so that they could have assisted the victim or the survivor better in the process. And to me, that's really something that I've been also advocating. I remember I have partner, a friend who's working with the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And they're very supportive. They have funds. They can help out any distressed migrant, any distressed worker, whether legal or illegal, from any country. They would fund, because the Archdiocese really has a very robust program. But the problematic part for her really was they would help the migrant or the overseas Filipino worker on the Kuala Lumpur side. But going back, she really has difficulty connecting with the receiving country, even from the church network, sad to say. So it's a bit challenging. So to me, the term network of responses, like there's a different process in ensuring that the laws that we're discussing, even from the beginning, can really be can really serve those who needs to be served, the victims, the survivors, the vulnerables. But we really need to organize ourselves with partners from different stakeholders. So we should work with government. Yes, corruption can be involved, but there are good people in the government. That's our experience in the Philippines. It's challenging in the beginning, but you will find good people who really are very serious in helping those who needs to be helped when it comes to human trafficking or illegal recruitment for migrants issues. But again, patience and really a lot of hard work is needed. So government, NGOs, they have more funding, and they're, if you can partner with them, because there are, again, in the reintegration part, it's very challenging how they can start again. So if we can complete the network where government, CSO, NGO, or local people's organization, the local church, or a national network of the church, if we know who's doing what and we're connected, then it's really easier to access such services, so that their reintegration and even compensation. We've had successes with really securing compensation from cases where Filipinos are trafficked abroad, and we're able to advocate on both sides, and we're able to put the perpetrator behind bars, and then compensation is given to the survivor. But again, it takes a lot of hard work and intentionality so that we can really connect. So whatever is the gap, what's there and what's the gap, then develop a partner or look for who's doing what, because this particular service or access to either legal system or social services would be needed. So and I love looking at where we're all from, because again, we're starting to connect. One practical thing I did with our Kuala Lumpur partner was to provide her with a Roman Catholic directory of the dioceses and the archdioceses. So if it's migrants and there's a migrants person involved, then she can connect with them. If not, she would call me up and then I would try to connect. But again, in the beginning, it's a very loose agreement, but later on, it really will benefit the returning migrants and human trafficking survivors.
Okay, let me get this clearly, Gigi. This compensation, did it come from the trafficker or from the state? I missed a point there when you were talking about the compensation that you...
Yes, sorry. Both sides, Father Richard. The government, by law, again, through advocating, again, by churches, by NGOs, within government power actors, were able to put into law that a human trafficking survivor can have access to a particular amount when he or she returns, and it's proven. So there are documentary requirements, but again, it's not as difficult. And then from the other side, because it's also strategic to partner with the country of origin where their victim, where they were victimized or trafficked, and because again of partnership with them, then once the perpetrator is convicted, then the survivor can have access, depending on the law, depending on the amount, depending on the penalty, then the survivor can have compensation both from the government side and then from the perpetrator.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, Farzan.
Good evening, every one of you.
How are you?
Sorry.
We hear you. You just unmuted yourself. Okay, me unmute. Farzan? Farzan?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, every one of you.
How are you?
I have much experience of human trafficking, but my experience is quite different about the force of child labor. That area is in Pakistan and it's near to Lahore. It's a brick kiln area, and where the parents forced to their girls to make the bricks for the brick kilns because the people are very in extremely poverty, and they take the loan from the rich people, and after that they also living their land. And one woman was sharing with me that when we don't send our girls to make the bricks, that their owners, they beat our girls. Then I sit with them and they share with me, and they were weeping and crying. And so I said to them, is it better that if we put your girls for education in hostels? Then that women did not agree. They said that we took the loan from the rich people, and how can we send our girls to the hostel for the education? I said, we will bear your expenses, and you say just give me your girls, then we will educate them. Where I have to be visited 4 and 5 times, then 2 and 3 women, they can agree with me, and they said that we don't share with our owners, but we will send our girls in the hostel. And that Bata is very near to our hostel in Shekhpura. And we took their 3 girls and put them in the hostel. Then we tried to educate them. But after that, what happened? That owners, they came to know that their girls, their daughters, their sisters came here. And personally, I go to that Brickland areas, that is very poor area. They live in very poverty, extremely poverty. Then that lady said that, sister, I wanted to take my girls back, otherwise they will kill us, and they will scold us, and they will beat us. Then these 3 girls went back, but I have to try all the time, and I said to the community which is living by the near to that Basti, I said that you have to go there and do the counseling, and have to ask to the women that they have to be sent their girls to the hostel. Then we have to educate the girls, and this is the way that they have to be come out from their slavery, because of the loan their children also become slaves. And we are trying to get out from their slavery, and the sisters also trying. But sometimes it's very strange and very bitter, because they work with the Muslims, and so many times when they become in the teenage, they also uh, get the rape. And that woman was sharing with me that what I do, sister, because sometimes they rape our daughters. Then we decide that you have to be go to the government, but they told me that because but I am aware about my country. Here government does not comply with even minimum of elimination efforts for slavery, especially for the Christians. Procedures are not set to identify trafficking victims among the immense populations to protect them. But we are also, she said to me that, sister, don't take this initiative, because then the police officers and also you also become become yourself into the problems, because here is the situation is quite different. We can't raise our voice. That's why I would like to ask you, please help us and give us some strategies in order to formulate policies accordingly for prevention, protection, and punishment for the poor people.
Okay. Thank you for raising that important issue. Farzana, you kept calling them girls. How old are these girls?
These girls, those who are forced to child labor, they are 7, 8 years old.
I'm
But
glad you're
those who
naming
are,
it. It is child labor. Okay.
yes,
Now,
child
the
labor, but
best
those who are
protection we
raped,
would have.
they are 16, 17 years, because they work in the rich families, and whenever they want their sons, they can put them into the rape, and sometimes they have to be blamed on the robbery also.
And you're saying that that the state does not have capacity to take on the rich
Yes.
people for what they are doing.
Yes. Yes, yes.
But the state knows that it is child labor.
Yes, but the church in Pakistan, the bishops are also very active for this slavery and for the human trafficking. They are doing a lot, but sometimes it's a lot of corruption here, and sometimes they give the what we call, they are give the money to the police, and then the police did not have the registered their incidents. But the church is doing a lot, but still the church is trying to get out from the Christians from this situation.
Okay. Usually when the state doesn't seem to be moved, we usually appeal to the international mechanisms. Starting with next week, we'll be tackling some of the international mechanisms.
Yes.
But I would like to point out the International Labour Organization conventions. There could be a good source of protection. Find out if the International Labour Organization office in Pakistan is involved in following up this matter, whether it has a reporting desk for these cases. We also have the special rapporteur on the sale of children, who could be useful in this situation. We'll be talking about the relevant special rapporteurs in, I think, the next class, the class of Monday. Those international mechanisms have a way of engaging the government at the international level. How? For example, when a matter is raised by you, and a matter is raised by you to the special rapporteur in Geneva communicates to the ambassador directly of Pakistan in Geneva, asking for an explanation while child XYZ in a certain village in Pakistan is doing child labor. This ambassador will then communicate to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Pakistan to ask him for answers. The ministry will then ask the police commissioner to tell him what is happening in that village so that a report might be given in Geneva. So that process, it usually takes place actually in less than a week. If the information you've given is verifiable, your government will be called to explain globally what is happening to those children down in the village. So there is a way in which you could get your government to act when we use the international mechanism, but we will learn about the mechanisms when we get to next week's engagement, because we'll do special procedures, we'll do treaty bodies, and we will also do the universal periodic review mechanism. Okay, Mutinta Simanza, you wanted to say something? Titiana will follow after that.
Yes.
Let's go with Mutinta first. Yes. You need to unmute. We didn't hear you. Unmute your microphone. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to share something similar to what Fazana shared. It's about child labor and sexual abuse. Yeah, I had an experience 2 years ago whereby a child in our locality was being abused by the uncle. And the real relative is the aunt who brought the child under the pretext of keeping her so that she can be educated. Unfortunately, that girl didn't receive what she was supposed to because the school fees were not paid for. So the uncle took advantage of that situation to say, if you do this, if you sleep with me, I'll be able to pay for you, because the aunt didn't fulfill her duties. So finally, the teachers at the school notified the clinic. I work at the clinic so that we could examine that child if she was really sexually abused. We found a little bit of evidence, but we couldn't find the real evidence, which is spermatozoa in the child. And the child in the evening came to our convent to report that the aunt was busy abusing her physically by beating her, insulting her, and doing all sorts of things. We couldn't keep the child in the convent. We notified the police officers after counseling the child, said that we're after her protection. We notified the police officers, and he recorded something. Unfortunately, he said the child had to be exposed to the same environment to say if she's abused again sexually and physically, that's when action will be taken, because there will be evidence. So I didn't know much on those cases, but as sisters, we made some arrangements, which later were just dismissed up to date. But the child, fortunate enough, she ran away from that home and went to the other aunt who could take care of her a bit. So regarding that case, we didn't know what to do with the child. So I'm seeking help in case of such an event. What should I do? Or what should the community do?
It is so sad, sister, that the police officers there behaved the way they did. The basic principle in any situation where a child is involved, we call it the welfare principle. You take a decision based on the best interests of the child. Sister, no one would have imprisoned you if you chose to retain that child in the convent. Having filed the case that you filed and reported an abuse of the child, and the police officer is returning the child to the abusive environment, you had a right to keep the child on you. And actually, you should have asked the supervisors of that police officer to intervene. Why do you return a child in an abusive environment? These principles are clear. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is the most highly ratified convention. Many other conventions have less than 150 ratifying countries. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is ratified by 192 out of 194 countries. So it is a highly accepted international convention. All you do when a child is involved, you put your foot down. The safety and welfare of the child take precedence. If a junior officer is returning a child to an abusive environment, you can override that junior officer and appeal to their supervisors before returning the child to an abusive situation. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Titiana, you had something to say?
Yes, can you wait? Yes, going back to the case of Pakistan and with the sisters, I want to ask you a question. Is it disclose the identity of those who have are denouncing or filing the case when you go to a upper level. I mean, Geneva, you know, and what you have said. Because sometimes you know that people are quiet or keep quiet, and also, let's say, also the church, because there would be also retaliations.
When the stakes are high and the risks are high, sometimes silence becomes an option. Sister Farzan, did you understand that?
Because also for organization and let's say also the church, sometimes it happens that, you know, the silence is better than the you know, the act of the denounce, because otherwise you are going to touch also the presence of the organization of the church in that country too, to compromise it. I don't know whether it's clear.
Sister
or
Farzan,
not,
did you understand the question?
Please repeat it again, sister, please.
Sister is asking that could it be that the silence surrounding the case of these Pakistani children is connected to the fact that it would have been weighed that probably it is better to keep quiet than raising the rubble, meaning that asking questions would probably have compromised the position of the church in that area, or probably that the actions of the sister could have compromised the position of the victims and their families. Could that, could the silence or the slowness to act be connected to that?
The church is not compromised with these issues, but they're trying a lot. But in Pakistan, the situation is very different, because those who are officers, police officers, those who are in the small jobs, they take the bribery from the rich people. And here is very much this issue. But the church is not, the church is trying a lot. But this is an Islamic country, even not with the Christians, even with the Muslims also. You know, I think you know the case of Zainab, girl also. She was 7 years old, and her father, their parents went to Saudi Arabia for their Makkah Medina. But after that, one man raped her and killed her on the road, and then he put her under the tree. Then they have to be the church also. The fathers and sisters, they went to see their, they went to show their home, and they prayed over there, and they took this challenge. And also when they raised their voice also. After that, the police caught that man and they arrested him. And after that, he was in the prison. But the next, I don't know the case. What will be happen of that man?
Okay. All right.
But sometimes, especially the female in Pakistan, they are afraid to raise their voice.
Yeah.
Okay. We will see. I'll check it out and find out if I can make some suggestions next time about how to put global pressure on your government there.
Okay.
And see if the work that you're doing as a church, if it gets support from governments and interested entities. Sometimes things move when pressure, you know, a small happening in one village, we can make global noise about it and the government will yield. That's what we usually do sometimes in activism. So yeah, there's a possibility we can, those of us who are on this platform right now, if we chose to activate a petition to protect those girls in Pakistan with facts, and we pushed it around for signatures, Pakistan will have to yield. You know, There's that other Muslim girl, I think it was in Pakistan again, who was being forced either to get married or something, and we made a global petition on Citizen Go.
Yes.
You know, yeah, we could be able to pull off some of those things when you feel helpless within the country and you think that the system is not protecting you and is not protecting the girl. We do a global petition from the outside, and your name is never mentioned anywhere, your community is never mentioned, but the case is raised globally, and we do the push from the outside. Sometimes it happens. Okay.
Yes.
So Kinsley, you're saying someone, you lost someone in the community. What happened? Tell us.
Thank you. No, I just received a message where some of our priests who are working, we have 2 doctors, two of them are doctors. Some of them are working with some organizations in Spain since the outbreak of this coronavirus. So at the point, almost 10 or 13 of them are sick, very sick. And I believe is one of them, one that was working in the hospital, was a hospital that was highly infected. So I believe the issue, the affection came from there. About 10 or 11 of them were very, very sick as of last week. Now we just received the sad news that 5 of them have gone.
Oh my.
Three of them are very, we have 3 of them also that are very, very sick again. And I don't know. But others, I think they've recovered. Some of them have recovered, but there are still 3 that are in a very difficult situation. We don't know. But 5 just died this morning.
Wow.
While we're talking, they sent me a message. It was very shocking.
Wow. Wow. They died in hospital or at home?
3 died in the hospital, 2 died at home.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It is a very sad situation for sure. I really hope that we get over this situation. I know some of the protocols being used to look after the patients are
guaranteed, yeah.
Are also wanting, you know. Personally, I'm not sure why World Health Organization is not adding vitamin C on its regimen. Since they know it is an immunity situation, I would hope that people are being quarantined, but also we boost their immunity and supplements there. But anyway, they are the experts. We will let them do what they have to do. Okay, do we have someone who would like to add to this situation we are discussing of returning, the right of return, and the ability to address the question of remedies when people have returned? Sister Prince, you've been very quiet today. What is happening? Okay. Jacqueline? Philomena?
Yes, please. Hello?
We've missed you. We are listening.
Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, I had a little challenge here. I can't see anything because there's a dialogue box in front of me. Wouldn't let me type nor see anything, but thank God you can recognize I'm here.
Yes.
We can hear you, sister.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, what I want to contribute, like, as I was listening to everything there, I was really overwhelmed. And I can recognize that those were the stage we're in when we started this whole thing in Nigeria about rescuing as far back as 1999 into 2000. So it was very scary. But listening to what others have shared, I could see that we have gone a long way here in Nigeria, especially in the part of Nigeria where I'm talking from. I'm talking from Edo State, Benin City. where it has been happening since that 1999, the women religious established COSUDO for rescuing traffickers. COSUDO was the first to dare to enter into rescuing and then rehabilitating. Today in Benin City, we have 1,001 of NGOs all working on trafficking. So it has helped to remove certain tension, especially on the victims. Before, when they used to come back, they would be afraid and dread of the traffickers coming after them. It's not the case again today. The many NGOs now plowing into helping the traffickers have helped to reassure the girls that nothing will happen to them if they should open up. But the area that is still, we are still thinking something should be done is the area I shared the last time of prosecution. Those NGOs now, everybody is out for traffickers, even though they have no face. It's not easy to locate them. But the traffickers themselves now know that they are being hunted. And the girls are a bit more relaxed. Even some will tell you their story. They are not afraid of the traffickers again, as sometimes when they used to share, they will look sideways in case anybody was after them. It's not the case again. They are much more confident to tell their stories, in spite knowing that all these people around now are for their interests. So the area that we are really thinking that something should be done more will be in the area of prosecuting the traffickers. And I wanted to ask, the question about IOM, because I understand that IOM is a EU sponsored organization. And if EU, looking at what
I couldn't join because of.
Sorry, am I cut off?
If anyone.
Hello?
Yes, go on, Philomena.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying that I understand that EU, IOM is EU sponsored. And EU is externalization of the border issue. It's coming from EU and then dealing with our people in Libya. A whole lot of them drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. If they are sponsored by EU and they come back here, pretend to be godfathers to help rehabilitate these victims, I just wonder, it doesn't sit well with me. I think that their business is double dealing. Maybe I'm wrong. Because some of these victims will come back, IOM will give them money to go and to rehabilitate them. And they feel people are helping them, whereas at the background, they are the agents for the people treating them badly behind. So that is where my question will be.
Okay. Now, the International Organization for Migration is a member state organization. And it is a UN agency. It might be funded by the EU for sure, because the EU is interested in matters migration. It is interested in keeping migrants in their countries, or if they are to move, it is interested in facilitating a proper movement that is not corrupt or is regular. So yes, I get your concern that how could an entity that is fully funded by EU be interested in the people we are dealing with? But I would also ask you the same question. The African Union is funded close to 64% by the EU. Is the African Union promoting African concerns? Sister, you don't have to answer that, but generally, that is the situation in which we operate, that the powerful seem to determine what happens on the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If anyone.
Thank you very much.
If anyone. Okay, she didn't hear me. Okay. All right, good people. We are drawing close to the end of our class. I don't know if there's anyone who has anything to say before we close. Next week, we are starting on the human rights mechanisms.
Can I ask something?
Yes, Sister Laura.
Okay. Now, good evening to everyone. Father Richard, there is a case that we encountered some
I'm
2 years
a
or 2 years
biological
ago.
father.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Richard.
Yes, go ahead, Sister Laura.
Please, I don't.
Hang on, if anyone, you come next. Hang on, you come next.
I'm sorry, can I proceed?
Yes, go on.
Okay. Now, this one, she was a refugee here in Kenya together with her eldest brother and the youngest brother. And then they were given resettlement to Netherlands in 2015. At that time, when they entered Netherlands, she was still under 18. But as soon as they settled there, she reached the age of 18. Now, she came here after 2 years in Kenya because she could not stand the life she had there in Netherlands. All that she could say was hell, 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 because there was also some kind of the receiving organization there, according to her, abused one, and then two, there was also this dimension of drugs trafficking. And then she came here in 2018. She came back here in Kenya with a very complicated way of coming here. She could not go back. She could not come here straight from Netherlands. So she went to Sweden by plane and then took train to Milan, and from Milan to Mombasa straight. And she had no return flight. And then all that she wanted to do was to be here with Kenya. And then when she was here in Nairobi, finally, she connected to the sisters from that ran the primary school she went to. And then she was referred to us. And I could not categorically say that she was a victim of human trafficking because there were so many things in her stories. And her story, one after another, she was disclosing story one after another. She could not tell us straight what her story was. At any rate, we kept her for some time together with the AOSK. And then finally, since her case was of immigration also, and then she was holding a valid Netherlands passport. And then she was finally referred to the UNHCR. And then we did not know what happened after that because she could not go back to Congo. If that is a principle of non-refoulement, how do you pronounce that word? I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, that's really a complicated case because she came in from Congo. She was a refugee in Kenya. Then she was resettled in a third country, but she did not like the third country, and she gets out of the third country, returns to the second country. So UNHCR is the one to do that. It is only UNHCR can say that now that she's 18 and she's not comfortable with the third country, they give her another third country, if one would say that. So UNHCR was not supposed to handle it, so I'm glad they referred her back because it is UNHCR in the first place that had taken her to Netherlands.
Okay. So it was okay, good. Thank you. Because in the beginning, when we received her as a case, it was a very difficult case to handle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was a good
It is also a case that the Dutch embassy would have handled. If she had been referred to the Dutch embassy here, they would have.
I don't know. She was brought straight to the UNHCR because hers
Mm.
was really a very complicated case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
If anyone wanted to say something before we close.
Thank you.
Thank you. She takes
Charles, I would like only to understand something about the methodology that we are using. Maybe I am not so used. Yes, it's Clara.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember before you were posting some things to do and everyone was answering there?
Yes.
Now that we have this chat together 3 times a week, I noticed that here is the place where we share. It is not necessary to share there in the where you post the materials and everything. It is enough here, or is there? We just only need to do the assessment that you are requesting us to do, the problems, just to answer, then it goes to you.
Our meeting
it's only for sorry?
Our meeting in this live chat cannot cover everything. I would encourage people to write comments on the material. If you're reading through it and you find you have something to comment, it should be okay to comment there. We meet in this session usually for an interaction, and I'm sorry I post this material late, usually 2 hours too, because
yes, exactly.
what happened that what the COVID situation did to me is terrible.
Yes, it was late. I checked last night.
No, for the reason I ask you, because for the difference in the time, for me it's starting my day, and for other people it's finishing the day. So for me it is good to keep, for example, the things in order to share here, or it's like before that we can also share there something. But I noticed that nobody is posting anything. It's just saying thank you for the material, Richard. And so maybe I said maybe I missed something, an explanation or something. It was just not a clarification.
The material is going
It's
to
good to
remain
post the
available
material early.
until next month. I think around 7th or so, the material will be there, so people can continue commenting and making use of it. I'm not pushing hard on that commenting because we have this live discussion, but it helps when people comment, because when I'll go through them, I'm able to respond to some specific questions. There are people here who might not have spoken, but they can be able to comment on the platform there. So we are using both platforms, and
excellent. Excellent. The compulsory to say like this is the problems that you are posting there, and you request us to okay.
Yes,
okay. Thank you.
It is good that everyone says something in that assignment section, because all we have done is we will be able to put all our knowledge together. I'll be downloading those things and processing them into one collective document for all of us.
Okay. In case we need to ask you some question, we do in that chat, ne?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard. And thank you to everyone.
Yes, Sister Christiana wants to close. Give us a prayer, we close, Christiana. Lead the prayer since you want to close now. You have to unmute.
Yes.
Yes, do the prayer, we go. And pray for the bereaved and the repose of the souls of our brothers in Spain.
Okay, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Then our Father, we thank you for the gift of this day and this moment that you have brought us together from different parts of the world to be able to share the issues affecting us, especially as regards human trafficking. Thank you for the contributions that have been made this day. We hope that together, bringing our ideas and suggestions together, we'll be able to fight this evil affecting us. And for the souls of the 5 priests and many sisters of different congregations that have died. We pray you, Lord God, to have mercy on them, save their souls, and console their biological families and their religious families, so that at the end of the day, this evil of coronavirus, wherever it has come from, will stop tormenting us. This and many other blessings we ask through Christ.
Amen.
Our Lady, help of Christians, pray
Pray
for
for
us.
us.
The
Pray
Lord of the Father, and
for
of
the
the
Son,
Son, and of
and
the
the
Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Let's meet next week.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye. All the best to all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Richard. Thanks.
Bye.
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 So, Olivia, are you there? Bye.
Bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.